From WFRB TV Local 5, your local election headquarters, this is Newsmaker Sunday with your host, Tom Zaleski.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmaker Sunday. I'm Tom Zaleski. Today, we take up the topic of prison reform in Wisconsin. As of November 8th, there are 23,453 people behind bars in Wisconsin prisons. That's according to the State Department of Justice. Of that number, 1,060 are housed at the Green Bay Correctional Facility in Alloway. And of course, overcrowding is an issue. Green Bay Correctional was designed to hold 749 prisoners. With the current population, that facility has 266 more prisoners than what was intended. And other Wisconsin prisons also face overcrowding as well. So here to talk about the effort to reduce population, Marion Boyle-Roloff and Jim Cairns with the organization known as Joshua Criminal Justice Reform. We thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Let me start off with you, Marion. Describe overall the problem that we face in Wisconsin with overcrowding prison population.
Sure. We have, since the 1990s, doubled our prison population in the state of Wisconsin, and the number, about 23,000, is where we're at. And we feel a lot of people are incarcerated for inappropriate reasons or for a length that is not appropriate. We have invested our time and energy in advocating for treatment alternatives and diversion programs instead of incarceration. So for those who would be looking at shorter stays, nonviolent offenders who are wrestling with addictions, with mental illness, and seeing how they can be diverted to a program that would help address those root causes and get them back into their community. And we're really proud of Brown County for how we've invested in that in this county, in I think 4 or 5 treatment courts that have proven to be very successful. We'd like to see that expanded in our county and through the state.
Now, Jim, Marion makes reference to people who probably shouldn't be behind bars. The way you're approaching this, how many people would be affected by this?
It's a statewide issue. It's not just GBCI. Sometimes when we start talking about GBCI, it's looked upon as, oh, that's a Green Bay regional issue. But it's a state prison. The prisoners come from throughout the state. The funding obviously comes from throughout the state. We look to other states that are doing a much better job than Wisconsin in reducing their populations. In fact, the Legislative Audit Bureau came out with an audit in May of this year. Several very interesting facts were brought up, and these are auditors, so they can, in their 93-page report, you can find out how much we're paying on prescription meds, and on another page, how much goes into overtime. There's a lot of numbers. But one of the interesting things is they compared us to our adjoining 7 Midwestern states, and since 2009, every other state has had a reduction in their state prison population. Michigan is the leader. They've gone down about 14%. They've closed several prisons. During that time, our prison population has gone up over 4%. There's something that we're not doing correctly that other states are doing better.
Well, for either of you, what do you think they're doing?
Well, first, in some cases, they passed some laws that have allowed for sentencing leeway as opposed to truth in sentencing, where a judge doesn't have a discretionary element. Secondly, their parole boards have been more active. For 8-9 years now, our parole board has been very inactive. We're hoping that it starts to pick up the pace now that there's a new parole board chair. A big area is with, this is a term that I always struggle with. When I say crimeless revocation, basically it's people being put back into prison for technical violations. Other states do a much better job with that issue. As an example, South Carolina, which is not one of our adjoining states, but it was one that was mentioned in the audit, they passed an omnibus crime bill in 2009, and from there they were able to reduce their populations significantly. One of the things in that bill is that you could not go back in for a technical violation. It was handled administratively. That's a lot of people that are going back in because they perhaps were in the wrong place, or they missed a parole board hearing or with their parole officer. And they also passed in that law that the longest a person could be on parole was 2 years. We hear stories of folks that are on parole for much, much longer than that in Wisconsin. Now, that doesn't necessarily affect the population in the prison, but if that person then gets revoked and put back in after that 2-year period without committing a crime, they're back in prison. So there are a number of issues that can be looked at, common sense approaches. Other states are doing them. We're asking our state legislatures and the governor to come together and look at these. It's got to be a comprehensive overview reform.
At the top of the show, we talked about prison overcrowding with reference, specific reference to Green Bay. And that prison has pretty well ended its usefulness. But your organization not in favor of replacing that prison, true?
That's true.
Why is that?
Well, you're right. Green Bay Correctional has outlived its usefulness as a facility. And I think it definitely is time for decommissioning. We have a lot of consensus around that. But if we take a look at some comprehensive criminal justice reform statewide, some common sense things, we can decommission Green Bay Correctional and not build a new prison. Currently, when Jim talked about crimeless revocations, the numbers we're looking at are about 5,000 that could be reviewed to see are they really appropriately being sentenced again. Is the technical violation enough reason for someone to be reincarcerated? You know, is it a choice between missing work or meeting with your parole agent? Is that why they're being sent back? So just a more thorough review as to why people are being reincarcerated. And then also for those who are dealing with the addictions, that's the primary reason that they're incarcerated, or dealing with living with mental health concerns, and that's the primary reason that they have been incarcerated. Again, treatment, alternatives, and diversions, finding out ways to invest our money into things that work and bring people back to community, and not investing more money into another prison. So we feel that we could bring down the population through some of those reforms, and we wouldn't need another prison.
If the facility were to be decommissioned, what do we do with the bad guys? Because there are some bad people in there.
Well, we look upon it as drawing down the system. We're not looking at the bad people that are the ones that oftentimes get thrown out when you talk about closing a prison. We're looking at the low-level drug, the mental health issues, the people that have been in prison maybe for 30 years and are eligible for parole and are not getting it. You draw down the prison from the lower levels, and then by reducing the population, you're able to move. The DOC, of course, would be in charge of this. They know what they're doing. They would move prisoners to more appropriate levels. We hear of cases where someone's in a maximum security prison, but they really belong in a medium security, but because that medium security prison is filled, they get placed in a maximum security. We hear of maximum security people that are eligible to go down to medium prison, and they can't go because they can't find openings. When a system's clogged up, it causes all these types of issues. No, we're not advocating for opening the doors and letting everyone out of GBCI. That's not realistic. But when you have 23,000, well, I think you said 23,400.
Statewide,
yeah,
yes.
There are definitely places where we can find common sense ways to reduce that population, reduce it safely, and in the long term, perhaps do a great deal with our state budget. We look upon this as the governor and the state legislature over the next couple years are facing a $1 billion decision. We have heard, it's hard to get numbers on things like this, but we have heard that to build a new maximum security prison that would accommodate 1,100 people would be in the $300 to $400 million range. We actually met with the state senator recently, and when we put that number out, his response was higher.
All right, let me jump in here because you have a program that specifically talks about this. You're having a program called A Conversation About Green Bay Correctional. We have a $1 billion decision to make.
That's correct. It's coming up November 21st at 6 o'clock at St. Matthew's Catholic Church here in Green Bay on Webster Avenue. And yes, it could be, with the cost of a $400 to $500 million prison, bonded over 20 years with the interest that's involved, we're looking at $1 billion. We could be putting $50 million a year back into programs that uplift our people, that reduce crime, that can provide the mental health diversions and the drug diversions that aren't properly funded right now. We could perhaps get some of that money back into more district attorneys. That's a whole another issue that is maybe a little bit separate from the prisons itself, but most counties are really backed up with being able to handle their prosecutions. The governor just recently put 3 district attorneys into Brown County. It didn't actually end up being 3 because then Brown County took funding away from one of their positions, so it's a net gain of 2. Mm-hmm. But we have people that are sitting in the Brown County jail for as long as a year without getting to trial because we don't have signature bonds, we have cash bail, and if you're not able to come up with $1,000, you'll be in the Brown County jail for a year waiting your trial. And it's just because of the backlogs. It's not only the state prison systems that are backed up, but it's also the counties. We're specifically looking at the state one on this particular issue, the Green Bay Correctional. We took a lot of solace out of what the audit committee came back with, looking at what other states are doing. They actually specifically mentioned 3 states in some of the bills they passed. They recommended, of the 36 prisons in the Wisconsin prison system, that Green Bay Correctional was the best choice for closing. And then you couple that with the fact that the Alloway Village Board has unanimously supported the resolution to decommission GBCI. Mm-hmm. That land is prime land. It sits above the Fox River.
Oh, they've got plans for that.
Yeah, I attended a village event where they had their models and all that, and yeah, we totally support getting that land back into the property tax rolls and letting Alloway develop it. It's just not a binary decision. The way it's being looked at right now is we either don't do anything for GBCI and over the long run put $150 million into fixing problems there, or we close it down and spend $300, $400, $500 million to build another one, and over 20 years we spend $1 billion on it. Why are we not looking at the other states that are reducing their population? I just don't believe the citizens of Wisconsin are more violent than the citizens of Michigan. There's something we're not doing right. Now, I'm not the expert in this, but when I see somebody continuing to dig a hole and they're not looking at how to get out of that hole, I scratch my head and say, gosh, let's go talk to some people in some of these other states. I almost hate to bring up the politics of it because you get into politics, it always becomes finger pointing. But we were told by an elected official when we were talking about this issue that it's easier to do criminal justice reform in a red state or in a blue state. It's more difficult in a purple state. And that's just, that gobsmacked me.
Which is where we are. We're talking prison reform, and we will continue our conversation right after this, so stay with us.